welcome. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Or, I might show up at your door. I'm just here to share some creepy stories, so sit back and enjoy. Disclaimer: the content presented in the video is purely for entertainment purposes only. The theories and stories discussed in this video are speculative and are not supported by any evidence or proof. Viewer discretion is advised. ChicagoSkywatch.blogspot.com, posted by user Stargazer84, October 14th, 2024, 11:47 p.m. I've never been the type to post anything like this online. I'm usually the rational one, the person who explains away the strange lights in the sky as airplanes or weather balloons or atmospheric anomalies. That's literally part of my job, identifying and cataloging unusual traffic and atmospheric patterns that might affect Chicago's transit systems. But what I saw tonight has no explanation. None. For those who don't know me, I'm Morgan Chun, just your average city traffic engineer with a side interest in amateur astronomy. Nothing special. I monitor traffic cameras, analyze congestion patterns, and occasionally point my telescope at the night sky from my apartment balcony. Simple life, simple pleasures. Tonight started as any other Tuesday shift at the Chicago Department of Transportation. I was monitoring the expressway cameras, tracking the usual bottlenecks, when I noticed something odd on the north side feeds. At first, I thought it was lens flare, just some artifact from the streetlights or maybe a helicopter searchlight sweeping across Lake Michigan. But when I checked other cameras in the network, they all showed the same thing. 6 distinct points of light hovering in perfect hexagonal formation over the lake. I called my supervisor, but he was busy with a multi-car pileup on the Dan Ryan. Nobody else seemed to notice or care. The lights weren't affecting traffic, so technically, it wasn't our problem. But something about their arrangement, the mathematical precision of it, kept drawing my eye back to the monitors. The lights weren't moving like aircraft. They hung motionless for exactly 14 minutes. I timed it, then simultaneously shifted position, maintaining their perfect hexagonal pattern, now slightly larger than before. It was as if they were expanding outward from a central point over the lake. No drift. No gradual movement. Just there, then somewhere else, as if the frames in between had been edited out. I saved the footage to my work drive and sent myself a copy. Something this strange deserved documentation. The drive home was uneventful, except for the unusual amount of air traffic. 3 military helicopters passed overhead as I crossed the Chicago River, not common, but not unheard of either. I didn't think much of it until I turned on the radio and caught the tail end of something that made my blood run cold. Beep. This is an emergency alert issued by the Chicago Department of Aviation. Unidentified aerial phenomena have been reported over Lake Michigan. All civilian aircraft are ordered to maintain a minimum distance of 15 miles from the lakefront between Grand Avenue and Navy Pier until further notice. This is not a test. Beep. The broadcast returned to some late-night talk show, the host making jokes about flying saucers and anal probes, apparently unaware of the alert that had just cut into his show. I nearly swerved into the next lane. They were acknowledging it. Whatever I had seen on those traffic cameras was real enough for an official response. When I got home, I immediately went to my balcony and set up my telescope. My apartment isn't lakefront property by any means, but I have a decent view of the skyline from the 18th floor. It took me a few minutes to find what I was looking for, but when I did, I couldn't look away. The lights were still there, but they were different now. The hexagon had become an octagon, 8 points of light so brilliant they seemed to cut through the night. But what struck me most wasn't their brightness or arrangement, it was their color. They weren't white or yellow like aircraft lights, nor were they red or blue like police lights. They were, I don't know how to describe it, almost as if they existed in colors just adjacent to what the human eye can perceive. Looking at them felt like trying to remember a word on the tip of your tongue. I took several photos through my telescope, but they all came out wrong. In each image, the lights appeared in different positions than what I was seeing with my naked eye, as if there was a delay between reality and what my camera could capture. In one photo, they formed a perfect circle. In another, they were arranged in what looked like a written character from some unknown language. Just as I was about to take another picture, my phone buzzed with a text from Eliza. She's a meteorologist for Channel 7 News and an old college friend, one of the few people who might believe what I was seeing. "Are you seeing this?" was all she wrote. "The lights over the lake?" "Yeah." "Got a view from my balcony," I replied. "No, the aurora. Check northern sky." I shifted my telescope northward, and sure enough, there were waves of green and purple dancing across the sky. An aurora borealis over Chicago in October. Impossible. We're too far south for auroras except in extreme solar storm conditions, and there had been no alerts from NOAA about solar activity. As I watched, the waves of light seemed to pulse in rhythm with the geometric pattern of lights over the lake, as if they were communicating with each other. The rational part of my brain struggled to process what I was seeing. Auroras don't behave like this. Light doesn't behave like this. I was about to call Eliza when the radio on my countertop, still on from earlier, suddenly cut to static. Then that same emergency alert tone. "Beep, this is an updated emergency alert. All residents within 2 miles of the Lake Michigan shoreline are advised to remain indoors and away from windows due to unexplained atmospheric disturbances. Do not attempt to photograph or approach the anomalies. Repeat, do not attempt to photograph or..." The broadcast cut out mid-sentence, replaced by a sound that made my fillings ache, a high-pitched tone that oscillated in a pattern that felt almost like language. It lasted for exactly 7 seconds before the radio returned to normal programming. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Eliza. "Did you hear that? On all frequencies. TV2. "Yeah," I replied. "What the hell is happening?" "Don't know. Station calling emergency meeting. Gotta go. Stay inside." I returned to my telescope, but the lights over the lake had changed again. Now they formed a complex, interconnected web that seemed to pulse and breathe. And as I watched, I swear I saw shapes moving within that web, silhouettes that were almost human but stretched and distorted, as if viewed through rippling water. I'm not posting this looking for attention or to start conspiracy theories. I'm posting it because I need to document what I'm seeing before someone tells me it never happened. Before I start doubting my own eyes. Whatever these lights are, they're not natural and they're not ours. And judging by those emergency alerts, the authorities know it too. I'll update this post if anything changes. If I can. Update 1:28 a.m. The lights have started pulsing in sequences of prime numbers. I've tried broadcasting the next number in the sequence using a flashlight from my balcony. No response yet. We'll keep trying. Update 3:47 a.m. Something is interfering with my internet connection. This post may not. ChicagoSkywatch.blogspot.com. Posted by user Stargazer84, October 15th, 2024, 6:22 p.m. My internet came back around 5 a.m. this morning, but I didn't sleep. Couldn't. Not after what I saw in those final moments before my connection dropped. The lights had begun to move in ways that defied physics, splitting and recombining, leaving trails like luminous teardrops across the night sky. I recorded everything I could until my phone's storage maxed out. When dawn finally broke, the lights faded from view, not disappearing but becoming somehow transparent against the brightening sky, like stars that refused to yield to daylight. I could still make out their outline if I stared long enough. A geometrical afterimage burned into my vision. Work called me 3 times this morning. I didn't answer. Instead, I've spent the day reviewing the footage I captured, frame by frame. There's a pattern here. I'm certain of it. The lights don't move randomly. Each shift in their formation follows a clear mathematical sequence. Not just the prime numbers I noticed last night, but something more complex. When I plotted their positions over time, they traced what appears to be a fractal pattern, each new configuration a more intricate version of the last. Here's where it gets truly strange. The pattern they're forming matches a sequence I've seen before. It's identical to traffic flow algorithms we use to optimize signal timing during rush hour, specifically, a proprietary model developed by my department last year. The same rhythmic pulses, the same expansion and contraction cycles. It's as if something took our algorithm and projected it into three-dimensional space. That can't be coincidence. I finally answered a call from my supervisor around noon. He didn't mention last night's phenomena directly, just said that some systems were experiencing temporary anomalies and asked if I could come in for an emergency protocol review. His voice sounded strained, rehearsed. When I asked specifically about the traffic camera footage from the lakefront, he paused for too long before claiming those cameras had been offline for maintenance. They weren't offline. I was watching them in real time. I told him I was sick, possibly food poisoning. He didn't push, just reminded me that all CDOT employees were under confidentiality agreements regarding any unusual data or imagery we might encounter during our work. The warning was clear: keep quiet. After hanging up, I checked the news. Nothing about mysterious lights or emergency alerts. Channel 7, where Eliza works, was running a story about minor solar flare activity that might produce aurora effects visible as far south as Wisconsin. No mention of Chicago. No mention of the alerts that interrupted broadcasts across the city. It was nearly 4 p.m. when Eliza finally called. She sounded exhausted. Her words rushed and hushed like she was hiding in a bathroom stall. "Morgan, are you alone?" she asked without greeting. "Yeah, I've been home all day. What's happening?" "The news is complete bullshit," she cut in. "They're calling it atmospheric research and military exercises. We had DoD officials in the studio this morning. They reviewed all our footage before we could air anything." My stomach dropped. What did they take? Everything from the lakefront cameras. "But listen, I saved the atmospheric data before they got to it." Her voice dropped even lower. "The readings don't make sense. We had massive electromagnetic fluctuations last night, off the charts. Temperature inversions that should be physically impossible. And the radiation signatures. What about them? They're not consistent with anything terrestrial. And they're still happening, Morgan. The instruments are still picking them up even though we can barely see the lights during daylight." I told her about the mathematical patterns I'd identified, about how they mirrored our traffic algorithms. "That tracks with what I'm seeing," she said. "These aren't random phenomena. There's intelligence behind this, Morgan. Purposeful communication." A chill ran down my spine. Communication with whom? I don't know. But there was commotion in the background, someone calling Eliza's name. "I have to go. They're watching us closely. Meet me tonight, 10 p.m. Adler Planetarium parking lot. I'll bring the data." She hung up before I could agree or refuse. I spent the next few hours cross-referencing my footage with astronomical databases, looking for any similar documented phenomena. Nothing matched. I did, however, find something disturbing in archived news reports. 3 separate incidents in the past month where commercial airline pilots reported instrumentation failures and visual anomalies while flying over Lake Michigan after dark. All 3 were briefly investigated and dismissed as equipment malfunctions. At 7:13 p.m., as sunset painted the sky in deep oranges and purples, my radio suddenly crackled to life, although I hadn't turned it on. The emergency alert tone blared, but this time, the message was different. This is a city-wide alert. Unusual solar radiation may cause disruption to electronic devices and communications systems tonight between sunset and sunrise. Citizens are advised to limit outdoor activities near the lakefront and avoid direct observation of any unusual atmospheric phenomena. Reports of lights or sounds should be directed to the Special Circumstances Hotline at 312-555-0123. Do not share images or videos of atmospheric disturbances on social media or public forums. This message will repeat every hour until sunrise. Special Circumstances Hotline? That's not a real thing, or at least it wasn't until today. And the specific instruction not to share images. They're trying to contain this, whatever this is. I tried calling the number out of curiosity. A recorded voice simply said, "Your report has been logged. An agent will contact you if further information is required." Then it disconnected. As night fell completely, I returned to my balcony. The lights were back, more numerous than before. The original octagon formation was now surrounded by dozens of smaller points, arranged in concentric patterns that pulsed and rotated in perfect synchronization. Together they formed something that looked disturbingly like an iris, with a dark center that seemed to absorb rather than emit light. A pupil staring down at Chicago. It was watching us. I was certain of it. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Don't go to Adler. Under observation. Destroy footage. DC. Who the hell was DC? And how did they get my number?" As I puzzled over the message, a sharp knock at my door made me jump. When I peered through the peephole, I saw a man in a Chicago PD uniform, his badge catching the hallway light. "Detective Ray Cortez." "Mr. Chan? We need to talk about what you've been posting online." My heart thundered in my chest. I hadn't told anyone but Eliza about my blog post. How did they find it so quickly? "Just a minute." I called through the door, rushing to my laptop. The Chicago Skywatch blog was still open in my browser, but my post from last night was gone, completely erased as if it had never existed. The knocking grew more insistent. "Mr. Chun, please open the door. This is a matter of public safety." I hesitated, my hand on the deadbolt. Through my balcony doors, I could see the eye in the sky had begun to pulse more rapidly, its light reaching across the city like probing fingers. One of those fingers seemed to stretch directly toward my building, toward my window, as if it knew exactly where I was. Update 8:17 p.m. Detective Cortez has left, but not before giving me an official cease and desist regarding what he called spreading panic through unverified claims. He knows more than he's saying. As I'm typing this, the eye in the sky has started blinking in what appears to be Morse code. I'm trying to translate it now. We'll update soon. Update 9:34 p.m. The message repeats, "We see you watching. Going to meet Eliza despite the warning text. Need to know what her data shows." ChicagoSkywatch.blogspot.com. Posted by user Stargazer84, October 16th, 2024, 1:17 a.m. I'm writing this from a 24-hour diner in Uptown, as far from the lakefront as I could reasonably get without leaving the city. My hands won't stop shaking. I don't know who to trust anymore. Eliza never showed up at the Adler Planetarium. I waited in my car for nearly an hour, watching the massive eye in the sky pulsing overhead, its light reflecting off the dark waters of Lake Michigan. The parking lot was eerily empty for a place that normally attracts late-night stargazers and couples seeking lakefront views. At 10:47 p.m., a black SUV with government plates pulled into the lot and circled slowly before stopping about 50 yards from my car. Two figures in dark suits emerged and scanned the area with flashlights. I slumped down in my seat, but it was too late. The beam swept across my windshield, and one of the agents pointed directly at me. I didn't wait to find out what they wanted. I started my car and sped away, taking a convoluted route through the south side before heading north again. No one followed me as far as I could tell. When I finally felt safe enough to check my phone, I had 3 missed calls from Eliza and a text message that simply read, "They took the data. Don't come." I tried calling her back multiple times. No answer. Around midnight, I finally got through. The call connected, but there was only silence on the other end. "Eliza," I whispered. "Are you there?" A rustling sound, then her voice, barely audible. "They were waiting for me at the station. Took my laptop, my phone. I'm using my backup." She sounded terrified. "Morgan, the data. It shows temporal distortions around the lights. Time itself is bending near these things." "What does that mean?" "I don't know exactly, but..." She stopped abruptly. I heard muffled voices in the background, then Eliza's voice, suddenly loud and artificial. "Actually, I'm feeling much better about those weather patterns now. Definitely just unusual upper atmosphere conditions, like you said. Someone was with her. Someone was listening. Eliza, I have to go now. I shouldn't have worried you with my theories. The official explanation from the Department of Defense makes perfect sense. Just atmospheric testing. Nothing to worry about. Good night. The call ended abruptly. I sat in my car for a long time processing. Temporal distortions. Time bending. The Department of Defense. None of this made sense, and yet all of it pointed to something far beyond normal government secrecy. As I drove aimlessly through late-night Chicago, the radio suddenly switched on by itself, something that had never happened before. Instead of the emergency alert tone, there was only a strange humming sound, oscillating between frequencies that made my teeth ache. Then a voice, distorted and mechanical, spoke a single sentence. The sequence is incomplete. The radio died immediately afterward. I pulled over, heart pounding in my chest. The sequence? The mathematical pattern I'd observed in the light's movements? What was incomplete about it? I finally ended up at this diner, where I've been nursing the same cup of coffee for the past hour while trying to piece this all together. The only other customers are an elderly couple and a man in a booth near the back, face hidden behind a newspaper. He hasn't turned the page once since I arrived. While sitting here, I've been searching online for any mention of the lights. Nothing on major news sites, but I found scattered reports on local forums and Reddit threads, all posted within the last 24 hours, all deleted within minutes. Someone is scrubbing information in real time. One comment caught my eye before it vanished. Check missing persons reports for the lakefront area over the past week. Numbers don't add up. Following that lead, I found something disturbing. According to public police records, there have been 23 missing persons reports filed in lakefront neighborhoods in the past 7 days, nearly 4 times the usual number. All of the missing individuals were last seen after dark, and all were described by witnesses as walking toward the lake. As I was reviewing these reports, my screen suddenly glitched, pixels scrambling before resolving into a message that wasn't part of the website. Stop searching. For your safety. The message flashed for only a second before my browser crashed. When I restarted it, the missing persons database was temporarily unavailable for maintenance. I was about to leave when Detective Cortez walked through the diner door. My blood ran cold. There's no way he could have tracked me here unless he spotted me immediately, nodding slightly before ordering coffee at the counter. Instead of approaching my table, he took a seat at the counter with his back to me and placed his phone face up beside him. A text message flashed on the screen, clearly positioned so I could read it from where I sat. Bathroom. 2 minutes. Being watched. I waited exactly 2 minutes, then made my way to the restroom at the back of the diner. Cortez followed shortly after, checking over his shoulder as he entered. I'm not here to arrest you, he said immediately, voice low. But you need to stop digging into this, Mr. Chun. For your own good. What exactly is this? I demanded. What are those lights? He rubbed his face wearily. I don't know. Nobody seems to know. But people are disappearing, and the department's been ordered to classify all lakefront missing persons cases as routine and unrelated. By who? Some federal task force that rolled in yesterday. They've taken over the investigation, if you can call it that. His eyes darted to the door. They're not investigating so much as containing. Containing what? Information. Panic. I don't know. He pulled out a small notebook and showed me a sketch, a rough drawing of the same eye-like formation I'd seen in the sky. 2 nights ago, my partner and I responded to a call on North Shore Drive. Elderly woman reported her husband walking into the lake at 2 a.m. When we got there, the husband was gone, but these lights were hovering over the water. My partner took video on his phone. An hour later, men in suits confiscated his phone and told us we'd seen a military training exercise. My partner insisted on filing a proper report. He paused, swallowing hard. He didn't show up for work today. His wife says he never came home last night. A chill ran through me, Are you saying the government is making people disappear over this? I'm not saying anything, Cortez replied carefully. I'm just telling you to drop it. Whatever these lights are, they're way above my pay grade. Way above yours too. He reached for the door, then hesitated. One more thing, your friend, the weather girl? They've got her in protective custody at Northwestern Memorial. Official story is she had a mental breakdown due to stress. Before I could ask anything else, an emergency alert siren blared from both our phones simultaneously. Beep, this is an emergency communication from the United States Department of Defense. Effective immediately, a temporary no-fly zone and maritime exclusion area has been established over Lake Michigan, extending 3 miles from the Chicago shoreline. This measure is part of scheduled atmospheric research operations. Citizens are reminded that spreading unauthorized images or misinformation regarding these operations violates federal security protocols. Compliance is mandatory. Beep. The alert was followed by a burst of static. Then 3 words in that same mechanical voice I'd heard on my car radio. Bring US the sequence. Cortez's eyes widened. You heard that too? He whispered. I nodded slowly. Detective, I don't think those additional words were part of the official alert. Jesus, he muttered. Look, forget we talked. I've got a family. I can't. He stopped abruptly, cocking his head as if listening to something. Do you hear that? First, I didn't. Then I caught it. A faint humming sound, growing louder by the second. It was coming from outside, a vibration so deep it made the pipes in the bathroom walls rattle. We both rushed out of the bathroom and toward the diner's front windows. The street outside was bathed in a pulsing blue-white light, far too bright for ordinary street lamps. The elderly couple and the man with the newspaper were standing motionless, faces upturned and expressions blank, as if in a trance. Above the building, visible through the windows, a pattern of lights identical to what I'd seen over the lake now hovered directly overhead. They found us, Cortez whispered. The humming intensified, and every electronic device in the diner, the cash register, the television, our phones, flashed on simultaneously, each screen displaying the same message. Sequence bearer identified. Await extraction. Update 1:45 a.m. We fled the diner through the back exit. Cortez is taking me to a safe house. The lights are following us. We'll update when I can. ChicagoSkywatch.blogspot.com. Posted by user Stargazer84, October 16th, 2024, 10:23 p.m. I'm using a burner phone to write this. Cortez insisted on it after what happened to my laptop. I don't know how long this post will stay up or how long we'll stay ahead of whatever is hunting us. Cortez's safe house turned out to be his divorced sister's apartment in Humboldt Park. She's out of town for the week, and the place is as far from the lakefront as we could reasonably get while staying in the city. 3 miles seems to be the range of the phenomena. That's the working theory, at least. The lights haven't appeared this far west. Not yet. After arriving here around 3 a.m., I tried to show Cortez the traffic camera footage I'd saved, only to find all my files corrupted. Not just deleted, but transformed into incomprehensible strings of code that caused my laptop to overheat when I tried to open them. The last file, when I attempted to access it, briefly flashed a single frame, a perfect geometric pattern that made my vision swim before the screen went black. My laptop hasn't turned on since. Whatever you captured, they don't want you sharing it, Cortez said, looking more spooked than a veteran detective should. We spent the rest of the night comparing notes. Cortez told me that the first reports of unusual activity over Lake Michigan had come in 10 days ago, a full week before I noticed anything on the traffic cameras. Commercial airline pilots reported navigation equipment failures and visual anomalies while passing over the lake after dark. The FAA classified these incidents as equipment malfunctions, but internally, the Chicago PD was instructed to increase patrols along the lakefront. That's when the disappearances started, Cortez explained, showing me his unofficial case notes. Always at night, always near the water. 27 people now. The official count I found was 23, I said. For more last night while you were watching the lights. All reported walking toward the lake as if in a trance. None have been found. He hesitated. There's something else. Something I didn't tell you at the diner. He pulled out his phone and showed me a photo. Grainy, taken at night, but clear enough to make out a human silhouette standing knee-deep in Lake Michigan, arms outstretched toward the lights overhead. The figure was surrounded by a nimbus of the same blue-white light that had bathed the diner. I took this before my partner disappeared. Watch. He swiped to the next image. The figure was now floating several feet above the water's surface, body rigid, still reaching upward. The final photo showed only empty water, rippling where the person had been. I felt sick. They're taking people, Cortez nodded grimly. And the feds know. They've been monitoring the lakefront with infrared equipment, cataloging the disappearances, but not stopping them. Why? What are they waiting for? I think they're trying to establish communication first. Understand what these things want. His expression darkened. But now I think they know what these lights want. They want you, Chin. Or more specifically, they want whatever sequence you've identified. The mathematical pattern I'd found in the light's movements. Somehow, I'd seen something no one else had. A pattern within the chaos, a language perhaps. And now both the lights and the government were hunting me for it. As dawn broke, Cortez left to check in at the precinct, maintaining appearances while gathering information. He returned just after sunset, looking haggard. It's getting worse, he said without preamble. 3 officers who were stationed at the lakefront perimeter last night haven't reported in. And there's a new federal task force in town, Department of Defense, they say, but their credentials don't check out. They've set up a command center at Navy Pier. What about Eliza? I asked. Is she still at Northwestern? A shadow crossed his face. She's gone. Officially, she checked herself out this morning. Unofficially, witnesses say she was escorted to a black SUV by 2 men in suits. My stomach dropped. We have to find her. And do what exactly? We're way outgunned here, Chin. He paced the small apartment. These feds, they're sweeping the city looking for you. Your face is on an internal bulletin. Person of interest. National security matter. They're monitoring traffic cameras, cell networks, everything. That explained why he'd insisted on the burner phone. There's something else, he continued. The morning news ran a story about unusual solar flare activity affecting communications. They're telling people to expect service disruptions and possible power outages tonight. Let me guess. Especially near the lakefront, the whole city. I think they're preparing for something big. As if on cue, the lights in the apartment flickered, then stabilized. Cortez's police radio crackled to life on the kitchen counter. Standard department issue, separate from cell networks. Through bursts of static, a voice announced, "All units be advised. Electrical disturbances reported citywide. Backup generators on standby for essential services. Patrols requested at electrical substations per federal directive." Then another voice cut in, this one distorted and mechanical, the same voice I'd heard through my car radio. The sequence progresses. Convergence at 2347. Cortez stared at the radio. That came through the official police band. How is that possible? Before I could answer, every device in the apartment, the TV, Cortez's personal phone, even the microwave, turned on simultaneously. Each screen displayed a countdown. 3 hours 42 minutes and 17 seconds. 3 hours 42 minutes and 16 seconds. 3 hours 42 minutes and 15 seconds. What happens at 2347? I whispered. I don't know, but we're not sticking around to find out. Cortez grabbed his service weapon and badge. We need to get you out of the city. Just then, his police radio erupted with urgent chatter. Multiple units reporting strange lights now appearing over neighborhoods miles from the lake. The perimeter was expanding. We were about to leave when a special news bulletin interrupted the static on TV. We interrupt this program to bring you an emergency announcement from the Department of Defense. Due to a Level 3 security protocol, the city of Chicago will experience a controlled power outage beginning at approximately 11:45 p.m. tonight. This measure is necessary to address critical infrastructure vulnerabilities discovered during routine testing. All citizens are advised to remain indoors during this period. Emergency services will remain operational. We repeat, this is a planned outage and no cause for alarm. The message ended, but instead of returning to regular programming, the screen filled with a geometric pattern, identical to what I'd seen in the corrupted files on my laptop. A pattern that pulsed and shifted in ways that made my head throb. "Turn it off," I said urgently. Cortez hit the power button. Nothing happened. He unplugged the TV entirely, but the screen remained lit, the pattern growing more complex by the second. "They're tracking the signal," I realized. "They know we're here." As if in confirmation, the pattern on screen resolved into words. "Sequence bearer located. Remain still. Collection imminent." Through the apartment window, I could see a blue-white glow beginning to intensify in the night sky above the building. Cortez grabbed my arm. "Back door. Now." As we fled down the rear stairs, every light in the neighborhood flickered simultaneously, then went out. Complete darkness engulfed us, broken only by the steadily brightening glow from above. In the sudden silence that followed, I heard a sound that turned my blood to ice. A low, rhythmic humming that seemed to resonate inside my skull rather than through my ears. The same sound I'd heard at the diner, but stronger now. Closer. My phone, the burner, vibrated in my pocket. When I checked it, there was a text message from an unknown number. "Morgan, it's Eliza. They're not what we think. The sequence is a key. Don't let them complete it. Find me at Burnham Harbor. Slip 42. It could be a trap," Cortez warned when I showed him. "Or she escaped and is trying to help," I countered. "Either way, it's our only lead." As we reached street level, the humming intensified. Looking up, I saw the lights had formed a perfect spiraling pattern overhead, rotating slowly like an otherworldly searchlight scanning the ground below. Every car alarm on the block triggered simultaneously. Through the cacophony, another emergency alert blared from the few working phones around us. "Beep. Citywide power deactivation beginning in 3 hours. Remain indoors. Do not approach or photograph any electrical anomalies. Interference with Department of Defense operations is a federal offense." Beep. But as the official message ended, another voice, Eliza's voice, broke through for just a moment. "Morgan, they're using your discovery against." The message cut off in a burst of static. They had Eliza, and they were using her to get to me. "We need to move," Cortez said, drawing his weapon as the spiral of light overhead began to descend toward us. "Whatever happens, don't look directly at the lights." But I couldn't help it. As we ran, I glanced up at the pulsing spiral, and for a split second, I swear I saw faces within the light. Dozens of them, pressed against an invisible barrier, mouths open in silent screams. Update 10:45 p.m. The blackout has begun early in some neighborhoods. Heading to Burnham Harbor. If you're reading this, do not trust the emergency alerts. They're not coming from our government anymore. ChicagoSkywatch.blogspot.com. Posted by user Stargazer84, October 17th, 2024, 3:17 a.m. I don't know how much time I have to write this. The power is fluctuating wildly across the city, and when it returns, it brings something with it. Something that doesn't belong here. I've barricaded myself in the harbormaster's office at Burnham, using an emergency generator to power this ancient desktop computer. It might be my last chance to document what's happening. We never made it to Slip 42. After fleeing Cortez's sister's apartment, we navigated through progressively darkening neighborhoods. The blackout was spreading faster than the official alerts had indicated, moving like a wave from the lakeshore inward. By the time we reached Michigan Avenue, the entire downtown corridor was dark, a surreal sight in a city famous for its illuminated skyline. Only emergency lights remained, casting eerie red glows that seemed to be swallowed by an unnatural darkness. "This isn't a normal power outage," Cortez said as we crouched behind an abandoned taxi. "Look at the emergency lights, they're dimmer than they should be. Something's consuming the energy." He was right. Even battery-powered flashlights and car headlights seemed muted, as if the darkness itself had substance, a weight that pressed against any artificial light. The silence was the worst part. Chicago is never quiet, but now an oppressive stillness had fallen, broken only by distant sirens and the occasional crackle of emergency radios. The normal urban soundscape, traffic, voices, music, the white noise of 8 million people living their lives, had vanished. We made it to the lakefront around midnight. Lakeshore Drive was abandoned except for military vehicles positioned at quarter-mile intervals, their headlights sweeping across the empty road. We kept to the shadows, using the landscaping as cover. "Those aren't standard army vehicles," Cortez whispered as we watched a convoy pass. "No markings, no plates." Blackout windows. Above us, the night sky had cleared of clouds, but there were no stars visible, just vast swaths of emptiness interrupted by those same geometric patterns of light I'd been tracking for days. But they were different now, more structured, more purposeful. They pulsed in sequences I could almost comprehend, like a mathematical language hovering just beyond my understanding. As we approached Burnham Harbor, my burner phone vibrated. Another message from Eliza's number. "Morgan, what you discovered in the traffic patterns was the key. The lights respond to numerical sequences. They've been using my atmospheric data to improve transmission. Don't trust Agent W." "Who's Agent W?" I asked Cortez. Before he could answer, a spotlight from one of the military vehicles swept over us. We dove behind a concrete barrier, but not fast enough. "Contact at Sector 7. A voice called out through an amplified speaker. "2 civilians approaching restricted zone." Then another voice, female, authoritative, cut in. "Hold your fire. That's our asset." Cortez gripped my arm. "We need to split up. Get to slip 42, find Eliza. I'll create a diversion." "They'll kill you," I protested. "They need you alive," he said grimly. "They don't need me at all." Before I could stop him, Cortez stepped out from behind the barrier, firing his service weapon into the air and sprinting away from the harbor, drawing the spotlight and several personnel with him. I used the distraction to slip onto the marina grounds. The security gate hung open, its electronic locks disabled by the blackout. The harbor itself was eerily still, hundreds of boats rocking gently in their slips, but no movement, no guards. Too easy. I made my way carefully along the docks, using the boats as cover. Slip 42 was at the far end, one of the larger spaces for yachts and weekend cruisers. As I approached, I saw a sleek vessel moored there, not the government boat I was expecting, but a civilian craft with Weatherly stenciled on the stern. Eliza's family name. A faint blue glow emanated from below decks. "Eliza!" I called softly, stepping onto the gangway. No answer, but the blue light pulsed once, as if in response. I hesitated, every instinct screaming that this was a trap. But if Eliza was aboard and needed help, the cabin door was unlocked. I descended the steps into the main cabin and froze. The entire space had been transformed. Every available surface, walls, ceiling, even the floor, was covered with the same mathematical sequences I'd discovered in the traffic camera footage. Some were written in marker, others projected from a laptop connected to portable devices I didn't recognize. And at the center of it all was Eliza, sitting cross-legged on the floor, staring at scrolling numbers on the laptop screen. She didn't look up when I entered, didn't acknowledge me at all. "Eliza!" Her lips were moving silently, matching the rhythm of the scrolling numbers. I took a step closer and noticed something horrifying. Thin filaments of blue light were extending from the laptop screen, weaving into Eliza's fingertips like fiber optic cables merging with her flesh. Her eyes reflected the scrolling data, pupils dilated and unresponsive. "What have they done to you?" I whispered. "She's translating," came a woman's voice from behind me. I spun around to find a slender woman in a black tactical uniform standing at the base of the stairs. No insignia, no identification, but her stance and bearing screamed federal agent. "Agent Weiss, Department of Defense," she said, confirming my suspicion. "You've led us on quite a chase, Mr. Chun. What have you done to Eliza?" "Nothing. The visitors did that." She stepped into the cabin, careful not to disturb the elaborate array of equations. "Dr. Novak volunteered when we explained what was at stake. She's serving as a conduit, helping us establish more precise communication." "Communication with what?" "That's what we've been trying to determine. The entities first appeared 10 days ago, interfering with air traffic control systems. We thought it was a cyber attack until we realized they were searching for something. Now we know they were searching for you, Mr. Chun. Or rather, for what you discovered." Outside, the ambient light suddenly intensified, the strange blue radiance from above growing stronger, casting sharp-edged shadows through the boat's portholes. "What did I discover?" I asked, moving to keep both Weiss and Eliza in my sight. "A frequency, a pattern within their transmissions that no one else identified. Our cryptographers worked for days with no progress, but you, an amateur astronomer with a traffic engineering background, spotted it immediately." She almost sounded impressed. "The entities noticed. They've been tracking your digital footprint ever since, following you through the city's transit system cameras." A high-pitched tone began emanating from Eliza's laptop, causing both Weiss and me to wince. On the screen, the scrolling numbers accelerated. "What do they want?" I asked, having to raise my voice over the increasingly painful sound. "To complete the sequence," Weiss replied, her eyes fixed on Eliza. "Your sequence, the one you partially decoded from their light patterns. We believe it's an activation code of some kind." "Activation for what?" Weiss's expression hardened. "We don't know, but major cities around the world are reporting similar phenomena over the past 48 hours. Chicago is just the epicenter." Eliza suddenly gasped, her back arching as the blue filaments brightened and multiplied, spreading up her arms like luminous veins. Her eyes flew open, but instead of her normal brown irises, they glowed with the same blue-white light as the entities. When she spoke, it wasn't her voice. It was a chorus of voices, layered and distorted. "Sequence requires original decryptor. Substitute conduit insufficient." Weiss pulled a sidearm from her holster and aimed it at me. "They want you, Mr. Chun. Your brain's specific pattern recognition capabilities. You need to take Dr. Novak's place." "Like hell I will," I said, backing away. "This isn't a request. The fate of Chicago, possibly much more, depends on establishing proper communication. If we can understand what they want." "They're taking people," I shouted. "Those missing persons. I saw them in the lights." A look of genuine confusion crossed Weiss's face. "What are you talking about?" Before I could explain, every electronic device in the cabin activated simultaneously. The boat's radio, a small TV mounted on the wall, Weiss's communications gear, even the microwave in the galley. Each emitted the same emergency alert tone. "Beep, emergency alert system. This is not a test. By order of the Department of Defense, all Chicago residents must remain indoors with eyes and ears covered until 6 o'clock. Do not look at the sky. Do not respond to electronic communications. Do not attempt to record or photograph aerial phenomena." Beep, but as the message continued, it began to distort, the official voice overlaid with another. That same chorus of voices speaking through Eliza. "B. Sequence requires completion. Eep. Emergency. All sequence bearers will ascend. System. Do not. Convergence point established at the sky. The resistance interferes with collection. Eep." Weiss's comm unit crackled. "Agent Weiss, be advised, perimeter breach at your location. Multiple contacts inbound from the water." Through the portholes, I could see the lake's surface beginning to churn and glow. The blue light intensified until it was nearly blinding. "Last chance, Mr. Chun," Weiss said, motioning with her weapon toward Eliza. "Take her place voluntarily, or I'll ensure your compliance. That's when the explosion happened. The harbor's main transformer station erupted in a ball of white-hot flame, sending a shockwave across the water that rocked the boats violently. In the momentary chaos, I lunged past Weiss, knocking her weapon aside, and bolted for the deck. I caught a glimpse of the harbor in flames, security personnel running in all directions, and above it all, the lights, now formed into a massive, rotating vortex directly over the marina. From within the vortex, objects were descending. Not solid craft, but what looked like tendrils of light reaching down toward the water's surface. An inhuman scream erupted from the cabin behind me. Eliza's voice, but not her voice, filled with an alien rage. The boat's deck began to vibrate beneath my feet. I jumped onto the dock and ran, narrowly avoiding Weiss as she emerged from the cabin, weapon raised. A shot rang out, splintering the wood by my feet. "Stop him!" she shouted. Asset escaping, but her voice was drowned out by a deafening hum that seemed to emanate from everywhere at once. The lights overhead pulsed in response, and I felt a pressure in my skull. The sequence replaying itself in my mind, numbers and patterns I'd seen in the traffic footage now burning themselves into my consciousness. I made it to the harbormaster's office as the second explosion hit, this one closer, hot enough that I felt the heat on my back as I crashed through the door. The office was empty, its occupants evacuated or taken. A small emergency generator hummed in the corner, powering a desktop computer and a single overhead light. And that's where I am now. The harbor outside is in chaos. Through the window, I can see the lights forming new patterns. Not random now, but a deliberate, organized formation directly above the boat where I left Eliza and Weiss. The blue tendrils have multiplied, reaching down to touch the water, the docks, the boats, and people. God help me, I can see people walking toward those tendrils, their expressions blank, arms outstretched. Some are harbor staff. Others appear to be military personnel, including some who were hunting me moments ago. The computer I'm using keeps glitching, the screen occasionally filling with fragments of the sequence, my sequence. They're in the systems now, in everything electronic. The emergency alerts are coming faster, overlapping, contradicting each other. Beep, remain indoors. Beep, proceed to collection points. Beep, this is the emergency broadcast system. Beep, the sequence must be completed. I just spotted Cortez through the window. He's alive, but something's wrong. He's walking stiffly toward the water's edge, his service weapon hanging limply at his side. His eyes reflect the blue light from above. I have to help him. I have to stop this. The generator just sputtered. Power's failing. I need to. Signal lost. ChicagoSkywatch.blogspot.com. Posted by user Stargazer84, October 17th, 2024, 4:01 a.m. I see now. The sequence isn't an activation code. It's coordinates. They aren't visitors. They're coming home. Signal lost. ChicagoSkywatch.blogspot.com. Posted by user Stargazer84, October 17th, 2024, 11:23 a.m. If anyone is still reading these posts, I don't know how much longer I'll be able to maintain this connection. The internet is fragmenting across Chicago, packets of data getting rerouted, corrupted, or simply vanishing. Like the city itself is being partitioned, not just physically but digitally. I'm no longer at Burnham Harbor. After losing power at the harbormaster's office, I had no choice but to venture back outside. What I witnessed there will haunt me for whatever remains of my life. The harbor had transformed. The water itself had become luminescent, pulsing with the same blue-white energy as the lights above. But it wasn't just glowing, it was rising, defying gravity in spiraling columns that connected to the tendrils descending from the vortex overhead. And suspended within these liquid columns were people, harbor staff, security personnel, civilians who had ignored the alerts to stay indoors. Their bodies hung motionless, arms outstretched, expressions frozen in a mixture of rapture and terror. Among them was Detective Cortez. I called his name, ran toward him as his feet left the dock, and he began to ascend within one of the watery columns. For just a moment, he seemed to recognize me. His eyes cleared, and his mouth formed words I couldn't hear. Then the light inside him intensified, shining through his skin like he was becoming translucent, and his expression returned to that same blank rapture. I reached for him, my fingers brushing against the bizarre column of water. It felt wrong. Neither liquid nor solid, but something in between, vibrating at a frequency that sent needles of pain shooting up my arm. I recoiled instantly, but not before I felt something brush against my consciousness. A vast, alien awareness taking notice of me. Sequence bearer located. The voice wasn't audible. It resonated directly inside my skull, accompanied by a cascade of mathematical patterns. My pattern, the sequence I'd identified in the traffic camera footage, but expanded now, evolving into something far more complex. I fell to my knees, overwhelmed by information flooding my brain. That's when I felt a hand grip my collar, yanking me backward with surprising strength. Agent Weiss had found me. "Move," she hissed, dragging me away from the water's edge as additional columns began to form nearby, reaching toward us. "They've accelerated the timetable. What about Cortez?" I gasped, struggling against her grip. "We can't leave him. He's gone. They all are." There was a clinical detachment in her voice that chilled me more than the sight of the ascending bodies. "The second phase has begun." She half-dragged me to a waiting tactical vehicle, throwing me into the back seat before jumping behind the wheel. As we sped away from the harbor, I caught a final glimpse of Cortez suspended in that impossible column, rising higher toward the vortex of lights. Then we rounded a corner, and the marina disappeared from view. "Second phase of what?" I demanded, still disoriented from the psychic assault. "What the hell is happening?" Weiss didn't answer immediately, focused on navigating the darkened streets. Chicago had become unrecognizable. The blackout was complete now, but the city wasn't dark. Instead, it was illuminated by that same unearthly blue glow, emanating not just from above but from within buildings, from street lamps, from anything with an electronic component. Digital billboards displayed fragments of the sequence rather than advertisements. Traffic signals pulsed in mathematical patterns instead of their usual red, yellow, green. "They're converting the infrastructure," Weiss finally said. "Repurposing it. For what?" She glanced at me in the rearview mirror, her expression grim. "Convergence." The radio suddenly activated, blaring an emergency alert that made us both flinch. "Beep. Attention all citizens. This is a mandatory evacuation order. Proceed immediately to designated collection points at Grant Park, Union Station, and Millennium Park. Military personnel will direct you to safety. Do not attempt to leave the city by unauthorized routes. Do not resist escort to collection points." "BP. That's not us," Weiss said tightly. "DOD issued no such order." As if to confirm her statement, the message continued, the official voice distorting until it became that same chorus of overlapping voices I'd heard through Eliza. "BP. Convergence requires all sequence bearers. Your consciousness will be preserved. Your physical form repurposed. Resistance causes unnecessary suffering. The sequence must be completed." "Beep. They're in complete control of the emergency broadcast system," I realized. "They're herding people like cattle to a slaughter," Weiss muttered, making a sharp turn down an alley to avoid a military checkpoint ahead. But these weren't regular troops. Their movements were too stiff, too synchronized, and their eyes reflected the same blue light that now permeated the city. "Where are we going?" I asked. "The contingency site." Weiss accelerated through a narrow passage between buildings. "After you fled the harbor, I received new orders directly from JSOC. There's a research team at the University of Chicago Physics Department that's been studying these phenomena since they first appeared. They have a theory about what we're dealing with, which is," she hesitated, "dimensional incursion. These entities, they're not extraterrestrial. They're extra-dimensional. They exist in a state of higher dimensional mathematics that occasionally intersects with our reality." I thought of the sequence I discovered, how it had seemed to exist both as a visual pattern in the lights and as a mathematical formula simultaneously. And my sequence? A key, Weiss said grimly. Or more accurately, coordinates for a door. You inadvertently identified the exact mathematical frequency that allows them to fully manifest in our dimension. They've been trying to establish this foothold for decades, maybe centuries, appearing as lights, as visions, as mathematical anomalies to those who could perceive them, but never able to fully cross over. Until now, I whispered, until you gave them the sequence they needed. The guilt hit me like a physical blow. Eliza, Cortez, all those missing people, their fate was on my hands. I'd unlocked the door without realizing what waited on the other side. We turned onto the Midway Plaisance, the long, open park that runs through the University of Chicago campus. Ahead, the Gothic spires of the university buildings rose against the unnaturally illuminated sky. But something was wrong. The architectural details seemed fluid, shifting subtly as I watched, angles changing in ways that should have been impossible. The spatial distortions are spreading, Weiss noted, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. Reality is becoming malleable near convergence points. As we approached the physics building, I noticed small groups of people moving with purpose, carrying equipment and setting up what looked like specialized sensors. Unlike the blank-eyed civilians at the harbor, these individuals moved with urgency and focus, their expressions alert and afraid. The research team? I asked. Weiss nodded. What's left of them? Half their number disappeared during the first phase. She parked the vehicle and motioned for me to follow her. As we exited, my phone, still miraculously functioning, buzzed with an incoming message. It was from Eliza's number. Morgan, I am the conduit now. I understand the sequence. They are not what they appear. The government knows. The collection points are not for evacuation. Find Dr. Nakamura in Ryerson. The equation can be reversed. I showed Weiss the message. Her expression darkened. That's not Eliza anymore, she said quietly. They're using her identity, her memories, to manipulate you. Just like they're using the emergency alert system to manipulate the population. Before I could respond, a man in a rumpled lab coat approached us, his eyes darting nervously toward the sky. Agent Weiss, he acknowledged. This is the sequence bearer? Dr. Nakamura, she confirmed. Yes, this is Morgan Chun. My blood ran cold. Nakamura? The same person mentioned in this message. Weiss's hand moved to her sidearm. What message? The ground beneath us shuddered. In the distance, a massive column of blue-white energy erupted from what appeared to be Grant Park, one of the collection points mentioned in the false evacuation order. The column stretched upward, connecting to the vortex of lights overhead, which had expanded to cover most of the downtown skyline. Screams echoed across campus as students and faculty poured from buildings, pointing at the column of light. Many began walking toward it, as if drawn by an irresistible force. Nakamura grabbed both of us. Inside now. The field generator is almost ready. As we rushed toward the physics building, I glanced back at the city I'd called home. Chicago's iconic skyline was transforming before my eyes. Buildings elongating, twisting, their architecture reconfiguring into impossible geometries that hurt to look at. And rising through it all, more columns of light, each filled with human forms being lifted toward the vortex. Another emergency alert blared from nearby speakers, the voices no longer bothering to maintain any human pretense. The convergence accelerates. The sequence is nearly complete. All will be repurposed. All will serve the integration. What did you discover in the traffic patterns? Nakamura demanded as we entered the building. What exact sequence did you identify? I tried to explain the mathematical pattern I'd seen in the movements of the lights, the formula that had seemed to leap out at me from the traffic camera footage. Nakamura's face went ashen. It's as we feared. You found the dimensional constant, the exact mathematical expression that defines the barrier between our reality and theirs. Can it be reversed? I asked desperately. Theoretically, he replied. leading us deeper into the building, past laboratories where teams of researchers worked frantically on equipment I didn't recognize. But we need the complete sequence, not just the fragment you identified, but its entire mathematical expression. The complete sequence is in Eliza's head, I realized. She's the conduit now. Nakamura and Weiss exchanged a look. Then we need to get her back, Weiss said grimly. Before the convergence reaches completion, the lights flickered overhead. Not the building's power, but reality itself seeming to stutter. Through the windows, I could see the sky fracturing along mathematical lines, the vortex expanding. How long do we have? I asked. Hours, Nakamura replied. Maybe less. The floor trembled beneath us as another emergency alert began to sound. This one different, more frantic, almost desperate beat. This is an actual emergency. The Department of Defense has authorized emergency countermeasures. All civilian personnel must evacuate beyond the 50-mile containment perimeter. This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill. Beat, that one's real, Weiss said quietly. What countermeasures? I demanded. Instead of answering, she led us into a large laboratory where a complex apparatus dominated the center of the room. A circular array of devices surrounding what appeared to be an empty containment chamber. Cables snaked across the floor, connected to banks of computers where scientists worked feverishly. Our last resort, Nakamura explained. If we can't reverse the sequence, we'll try to sever the connection. And if that fails? I asked, though I already knew the answer from the grim expressions surrounding me. Outside, the sky continued to fracture along mathematical lines, and I could feel the sequence pulsing through my consciousness like an unwanted intruder, counting down to convergence. ChicagoSkywatch.blogspot.com, posted by user Stargazer84, October 17, 2024, 12:01 p.m. They're preparing to sacrifice the city to stop the convergence. God help us all. Signal lost. ChicagoSkywatch.blogspot.com, posted by user Stargazer84, October 17, 2024, 4:38 p.m. I'm writing this from inside a Faraday cage, a hastily constructed mesh of copper wire and aluminum sheeting that blocks electromagnetic signals. Dr. Nakamura believes it might shield my thoughts, at least partially, from whatever is scanning for the sequence I carry. The university's basement has been converted into a last-stand research facility, a desperate amalgamation of physics equipment, military hardware, and improvised defenses. Outside, Chicago is coming apart, not just socially or structurally, but fundamentally. Reality itself is fracturing along the mathematical patterns I first identified in those traffic camera feeds. What began as lights in the sky has evolved into something far more horrific, the systematic unraveling of our dimension. The physics team has a working theory now, pieced together from observations, equations, and the fragmented data received before most of their monitoring equipment was corrupted. Dr. Nakamura explained it to me using analogies I could understand with my engineering background. Imagine reality as fabric, he said, dark circles under his eyes as he sketched diagrams on a whiteboard. Normally, it's tightly woven, following strict mathematical laws that keep dimensions separate. What you discovered in the light patterns was essentially a thread. Pull it, and the weave starts to unravel. But I didn't pull anything, I protested. I just observed a pattern. In quantum mechanics, observation affects outcome. Weiss interjected from where she was checking the ammunition in her sidearm. By identifying the exact mathematical sequence, you essentially activated it. Your mind became the key that turned the lock. Nakamura nodded. The entities exist in a higher dimensional space governed by mathematical laws we barely comprehend. They've been trying to establish a foothold in our reality for centuries, appearing as lights, visions, even what some cultures interpreted as gods or angels. But they could never fully manifest without the correct mathematical key, the dimensional constant unique to our universe, which I somehow found in traffic camera footage, I said incredulously. The pattern was always there, Nakamura explained. In the stars, in the movement of particles, in the formation of crystals. Most human minds filter it out. It's too complex, too alien for our brains to process. But occasionally, someone with the right neurological architecture encounters it in just the right way. He didn't need to finish the sentence. Somehow, my brain's particular wiring had allowed me to see what others couldn't or shouldn't. And now Chicago was paying the price for my pattern recognition. A researcher burst into the room, her lab coat stained with what looked disturbingly like blue fluid. Another breach in the physics building. They're coming through the walls now. Weiss immediately moved to the door, weapon drawn. How many? Not them, it, the researcher clarified, her voice shaking. The wall itself. It's changing, flowing like liquid, but still solid somehow. Peterson touched it and she held up her hands, which were covered in the same blue substance that stained her coat. He dissolved like he was being calculated into something else. His body just became equations. Nakamura cursed under his breath. The dimensional bleed is accelerating. We're running out of time. He turned to a bank of hastily assembled equipment. A bizarre hybrid of quantum computers, particle detectors, and what appeared to be modified EEG machines. At the center sat a small chamber constructed of specialized materials, connected to cables that ran to massive generators in the next room. Is it ready? Weiss asked. Nakamura's expression was grim. As ready as it's going to be, but without the complete sequence. We'll get it, she assured him, though I could hear the doubt in her voice. An alarm blared, not an emergency broadcast this time, but the building's own warning system. Multiple breaches detected, announced a voice over the intercom. All personnel evacuate to sublevel 3. Repeat, multiple reality breaches detected on floors 1 through 4. Weiss grabbed my arm. Time to go. You and I have a mission. What mission? I asked, even as she pulled me toward a service elevator at the back of the lab. We're going to retrieve Dr. Novak, she said, checking a tablet displaying a map of Chicago. The screen showed multiple red areas spread across the city, convergence zones where reality had already collapsed. In the center, a massive concentration of energy pulsed over Lake Michigan, extending tendrils throughout downtown. That's suicide, one of the researchers protested. The convergence radius is expanding exponentially. Downtown is already gone. Not gone, Nakamura corrected. Transformed. And that's precisely why we need to go there. Dr. Novak is the conduit. She contains the complete sequence now. If we can extract her, bring her here, we might be able to reverse the process. The elevator doors opened, revealing a small tactical team already waiting inside. For soldiers in specialized gear that included peculiar helmets with what looked like Faraday mesh integrated into the design. Last transmission placed the primary conduit at Willis Tower. One of them reported, or what used to be Willis Tower. Structure has been altered. Weiss nodded. Your team secures our path. Chun and I will handle the extraction once inside. As we descended to the parking garage, I pulled her aside. Why me? I'll just slow you down. Because you're connected to the sequence, she replied flatly. And to Eliza. The entities are using her as their primary interface with our reality, but your mind was their first point of contact. There might be residual affinity. You mean I might be able to reach her when no one else can? Exactly. And if not, she checked her weapon again. We have contingencies. The implication chilled me. If we couldn't extract Eliza and the sequence she carried, Weiss was prepared to ensure the entities couldn't use her anymore, one way or another. The garage had been converted into a makeshift motor pool, with armored vehicles being prepped by personnel in the same specialized gear. As we approached our designated transport, my phone vibrated in my pocket. Despite being inside a building with no signal, despite the electromagnetic interference that was disrupting all communications across the city, a message had somehow reached me. It was from Eliza's number. Morgan, they are building something, using us to build it. The sequence is a translation matrix. I can see everything now. What your government plans won't work. It will only accelerate the process. Find me. I am the last nexus point. But hurry, there isn't much of me left. I showed the message to Weiss, whose expression hardened. Could be a trap, she said. Or it could be the real Eliza, fighting their influence. We won't know until we find her. Then let's move. We loaded into the armored vehicle, a modified MRAP with additional shielding that Nakamura's team had installed. The tactical squad took positions, checking equipment that looked more appropriate for a space mission than urban warfare. Handheld devices with scanning arrays, weapons modified with components I didn't recognize, and containers made of the same material as the chamber in the lab. Remember your training, the squad leader instructed his team. Do not look directly at topological anomalies. Do not attempt to process mathematical patterns visually. If your cognitive defense system alerts, activate your emergency dampeners immediately. He turned to Weiss and me. We'll get you as close as possible to the target location, but we can't guarantee extraction. Once you have the conduit, use the beacon. 1 pulse means you need immediate evacuation. 2 pulses means the mission is compromised and we initiate Protocol Omega. What's Protocol Omega? I asked. No one answered, but the grim expressions told me enough. The garage doors opened, revealing a Chicago I no longer recognized. The midday sky had transformed into a swirling vortex of mathematical patterns, fractals, sequences, and geometric shapes that seemed to fold into themselves infinitely. Buildings still stood, but their architecture had become fluid, structures elongating and contracting as if breathing. Streets rippled like water, though they somehow still supported the weight of abandoned vehicles. Most disturbing were the people, or what had once been people. Some wandered aimlessly, their bodies partially translucent, blue light shining from within as they flickered in and out of full corporeality. Others had merged with the environment, their forms extending into walls, streets, or vehicles, as if reality itself couldn't determine where human ended and world began. And everywhere, the sequence, my sequence, pulsed and replicated. It flowed across buildings in waves of light, flashed from electronic devices, vibrated in the air itself. I could feel it pulling at my consciousness, trying to draw something out of my mind. Shields up, the driver announced, activating a system that caused the vehicle's windows to darken and emit a low-frequency hum. Cognitive protection at maximum. As we drove toward downtown, we passed military checkpoints that had been abandoned or, worse, repurposed. At one intersection, soldiers stood in perfect formation, but their eyes glowed with blue light, and their movements were too precise, too synchronized. They watched our vehicle pass without reaction, as if we were already cataloged and dismissed as irrelevant. Emergency alerts continued to blare from public address systems, but they had degraded into fragments of mathematical formulas interspersed with distorted voices. Beat integration progresses at optimal efficiency. All sequence bearers will be calculated. Resistance creates computational errors requiring correction. Beat, they're not hiding anymore, Weiss observed grimly. Whatever their endgame is, they're close to achieving it. The vehicle's scanning equipment suddenly activated, warnings flashing across monitors. Major gravitational anomaly ahead, the technician reported. Dimensional thinning detected. Through the shielded windows, I could see what had once been Willis Tower. The skyscraper had transformed into an impossible structure, still recognizable in outline, but now composed of angles that shouldn't exist in three-dimensional space. Its familiar black exterior had become translucent, revealing an interior pulsing with blue-white energy. And at its center, suspended in a column of light that extended from ground to sky, was a human figure. Target located, the squad leader confirmed. Conduit is at the central nexus point. Eliza, I whispered, recognizing her despite the distance and distortion. As we approached, the vehicle systems began to fail, first communications, then navigation, finally the cognitive shielding itself. The protective hum faded, and immediately I felt the sequence pressing against my mind, stronger now, insistent. This is as far as we go. the driver announced, stopping several blocks from our target. Any closer and we lose all systems. The squad leader turned to Weiss and me. You have 30 minutes before we initiate Protocol Omega. With or without you. Weiss checked her specialized gear one final time, then handed me a small device that looked like a hearing aid. Neural dampener. It won't block the sequence entirely, but it might keep you functional long enough to reach Eliza. As we prepared to exit the vehicle, my phone vibrated one last time. Morgan, I understand now. They aren't building, they're recovering. Chicago stands on what was once theirs. The sequence is revealing what was always here, underneath. Your calculations were correct. You found the pattern because it wanted to be found. By you. It's always been waiting for you. I showed Weiss, whose expression remained unreadable behind her tactical gear. Let's find out what it is, she said, checking her weapon and opening the door to what had once been Chicago. ChicagoSkywatch.blogspot.com. Posted by user Stargazer84, October 17th, 2024, 5:12 p.m. If I don't make it back, if nobody makes it back, let the record show. They were here before us. The lights didn't come to Chicago. Chicago was built on top of them. Signal unreliable. ChicagoSkywatch.blogspot.com. Posted by user Stargazer84, October 18th, 2024, 2:37 a.m. I'm still alive. Barely. The neural dampener failed about halfway to Willis Tower, or what used to be Willis Tower. The structure has transformed into something that defies architectural logic, a hyperdimensional lattice where interior and exterior spaces fold into each other. Rooms that contain other rooms that shouldn't fit. Windows that look out onto landscapes that aren't Chicago. Gravity that shifts direction when you turn corners. We lost 2 soldiers in the first 5 minutes. Not to hostiles, to geometry. They stepped through what looked like a normal doorway and simply ceased to exist in our plane. According to the squad's dimensional sensors, they didn't die. They just exist elsewhere now, translated into whatever space overlaps with ours. Agent Weiss keeps her eyes on her boots as we navigate. Don't look up, she warned me after the second soldier disappeared. The ceiling patterns are designed to capture consciousness. They're fishing for minds. I wouldn't have understood what she meant before today. But now, moving through this impossible architecture, I recognize the mathematical traps everywhere, patterns designed to lock onto the neural pathways of human brains and extract something. Information, energy, consciousness itself, whatever they want, these entities have engineered the perfect lures. Eliza is still at the center of this structure, but reaching her means traveling deeper into unreality. The building's transformation seems most complete at its core, where the Chicago I knew has been entirely overwritten by something alien. Each step closer feels like moving from a crude sketch into a fully rendered world, as if our reality was just a placeholder, a simplified model awaiting final implementation. The sequence is everywhere now, pulsating through the walls, ceiling, floor. I don't even need to see it to know it's there. I can feel it resonating with something inside my skull, like 2 tuning forks vibrating at harmonious frequencies. Agent Weiss notices me wincing. The dampener's completely offline, isn't it? She asks, checking her own device. I nod, fighting the vertigo. It's like the sequence knows I'm here. It's getting stronger. Good, she says, which isn't the response I expected. We can use that. You're connected to this thing. That connection might be our only chance to reach Eliza before the transformation completes. Transformation of what? I demand, my patience finally breaking. What aren't you telling me? What is happening to Chicago? Weiss stops walking and runs a gloved hand over her face, leaving a streak of what looks like blue luminescent dust on her skin. Dimensional exchange, she says finally. The Pentagon has known about these entities since 1947. Not aliens, as most conspiracy theories suggest, but extra-dimensional beings. They've been trying to establish footholds in our reality for millennia, but the mathematical constants of our universe kept them contained. Until now, what changed? I ask, though I suspect I already know the answer. Computing power, she says grimly. Quantum processors, neural networks, massive parallel processing systems. We inadvertently created technology capable of calculating the very equations that maintain the barriers between dimensions. Your traffic system's AI was running pattern recognition algorithms complex enough to identify the sequence. And once identified, once observed and processed by human consciousness, the sequence became active in our reality. Chicago is becoming a dimensional anchor point, a location where their reality can fully manifest in ours. A thunderous sound interrupts us, a deep bone-rattling vibration that seems to emanate from everywhere at once. The remaining soldiers ready their weapons, useless gestures against physics itself. That's the third harmonic shift, the squad leader reports, checking a device strapped to his wrist. We've got maybe 40 minutes before full convergence. What happens at full convergence? Ask. Either Chicago becomes fully incorporated into their dimension, Weiss explains, or what? Or the dimensional friction tears a hole in space-time that expands at the speed of light. Either way, we need to find Eliza. Now, the central atrium of Willis Tower no longer exists. Instead, we've entered a vast cathedral-like space that seems to extend infinitely upward. Suspended throughout this impossible volume are thousands of glowing blue spheres, each containing what appears to be a human figure, frozen in a moment of transformation. The missing people, I whisper, recognizing faces from news reports. A jogger who disappeared from Millennium Park, a bus driver whose vehicle was found empty, Detective Cortez. Sequence bearers, Weiss corrects. People whose minds could process fragments of the mathematical pattern. They're being used as computational nodes in a massive calculation. At the center of this horrific gallery, suspended in a column of blue-white light that extends beyond sight, is Eliza. Unlike the others, she isn't frozen. Her body twists and contorts as patterns of light flow across her skin. Her eyes are open, but they're not human anymore, their fractal pools spiraling inward infinitely. Morgan. Her voice echoes without her lips moving. You came. They said you would. We're here to get you out. I call up to her. A sad smile flickers across her face as the patterns intensify. There is no out anymore. The boundaries are dissolving. Don't you see? It's beautiful. The squad leader steps forward, raising a device that looks like a modified EMP generator. Target acquired. Preparing nullification pulse. Wait! I shout, but Weiss places a restraining hand on my arm. We can't save her, she says quietly. She's too integrated into their system now. The only way to stop this is to sever the primary connection. You're going to kill her. I'm going to save Chicago. Maybe the world. The squad leader activates his device, which emits a high-pitched whine as it powers up. Eliza's expression changes, awareness returning to her features as she notices the weapon. Morgan, she calls, her voice clearer now, more human. They're not what the government thinks. They're not invaders, they're refugees. Their dimension is collapsing. They've been searching for compatible realities, mathematical echoes of their own. Don't listen, Weiss warns. It's not her talking anymore. It is me. Eliza insists. Enhanced, connected, but still me. Morgan, remember what you discovered in the traffic patterns? The mathematical sequence isn't random. It's a language, a translation matrix. They're trying to communicate, to negotiate terms for coexistence. The blue spheres around us pulse in unison, as if responding to her words. The patterns flowing through the structure intensify, forming complex three-dimensional equations that hover in the air. Bullshit, the squad leader growls. We've seen what coexistence looks like. Half of downtown is already gone. Not gone, Eliza corrects. Transformed. There have been mistakes, miscalculations as they learn to interact with our reality. Our physical laws are foreign to them, just as theirs are to us. I look at Weiss, whose expression has hardened. We have our orders, she says. In 30 seconds, Protocol Omega initiates whether we're successful or not. The entire downtown area will be sterilized. Nuclear? I ask, horrified. Worse, dimensional cauterization. They'll use the entity's own technology, captured decades ago, to seal off this section of reality. Nothing gets in or out, ever. The implications hit me like a physical blow. Hundreds of thousands of people are still in Chicago, transformed or not. There has to be another way, I insist. Eliza's voice comes again, urgent now. There is. The government facility where Dr. Nakamura works, it contains a prototype dimensional interface. They've been studying this technology for decades, but they've never had a human mind that could withstand direct connection. Until now. Don't even think about it, Weiss warns, but I'm already putting the pieces together. You want me to interface with them? To become like you? Not like me, Eliza explains. I'm a receiver. My brain architecture allows me to accept their transmissions. You're different, Morgan. You're a translator. Your mind naturally converts their mathematical language into concepts we can understand. That's why you saw the patterns first, why you recognized their significance when no one else could. The squad leader's device reaches full charge. 10 seconds to nullification. I make my decision and lunge forward, knocking the device from his hands. It skitters across the floor, disrupting the charge sequence. The soldiers immediately train their weapons on me, but Weiss holds up a hand. Wait, she orders, studying my face. What are you thinking, Chen? I'm thinking we don't understand enough to start dimensional warfare, I reply. If Eliza's right, if these entities are refugees rather than invaders, we need to establish communication before we condemn them and ourselves. That's not your call to make. It is now, I counter, backing toward the column of light where Eliza hovers. You said I'm connected to the sequence. Let me use that connection. Morgan, no, Weiss shouts, but I've already reached the edge of the light column. As soon as my hand touches the energy field, mathematical patterns explode across my vision. The sequence that I first identified in the traffic cameras unfolds in my mind, revealing layer upon layer of complexity I never imagined. It's not just equations, it's concepts, ideas, history, emotion translated into perfect mathematical expressions. I see them now, the entities, not physical beings as we understand physicality, but complex patterns of information that maintain cohesion across dimensional boundaries. They've existed alongside our universe since its formation, occasionally brushing against our reality when the conditions were right. And they're dying. Their dimensional plane is collapsing, mathematical constants shifting in ways that make their existence impossible. They've been searching for compatible realities, sending mathematical probes across the multiverse. Chicago sits on a dimensional fault line, a place where our universe and theirs naturally thin. The indigenous peoples knew this. They built ceremonial sites here to communicate with what they perceived as spirits. Later, the electromagnetic grid of a modern city created the perfect antenna to receive the entity's increasingly desperate signals. They need a bridge, I gasp, the knowledge flooding through me faster than I can process. Not an invasion force, a diplomatic mission. The blue light intensifies around me, lifting me from the floor. I hear Weiss shouting orders, feel the temperature rising as weapons discharge. But it's all background noise now, irrelevant to the vast conversation unfolding in mathematical terms around me. ChicagoSkywatch.blogspot.com, posted by user Stargazer84, October 18th, 2024, 3:18 a.m. I don't know how long I was connected to them. Time loses meaning when you're processing information at quantum speeds. What felt like moments could have been hours. When I regained awareness of my physical surroundings, I was lying on the floor of what had once been Willis Tower's observation deck. The impossible architecture had partially receded, though nothing looked entirely normal. The walls still pulsed with faint blue patterns, and the view outside showed a Chicago transformed building standing, but altered in subtle ways that made them more mathematically perfect, more aligned with some cosmic geometry. Eliza sat beside me, her eyes now normal though flecks of blue light still danced across her irises. The soldiers were gone. Weiss lay unconscious nearby, her equipment fried. Did it work? I asked, my voice hoarse. Eliza nodded. You created a stable interface, a translation protocol their systems could adapt to. The dimensional breach has been contained to Chicago's Central District. And Protocol Omega? Cancelled. Your connection allowed direct communication with military command. They're evacuating a 10-mile radius while negotiations continue. I stood on shaky legs and moved to the window. Downtown Chicago had become something new. Not quite our reality, not quite theirs, but a carefully managed overlap. The mathematics of two universes, finding compromises where they could coexist. It's beautiful, I whispered, watching complex patterns of light flow through buildings, streets, and sky. It's just the beginning, Eliza said, joining me at the window. You're the first human translator they've found in millennia of searching. There will be others as the contact zone expands. Expands? I thought we contained it, she smiled. Contained the uncontrolled breach, yes, but coexistence requires space. Chicago is just the embassy, the first point of cooperation between dimensions. Behind us, Weiss groaned and began to stir. The blue patterns on the wall pulsed in response, forming what I now recognized as warning symbols. She's dangerous, Eliza said, glancing at the agent. Her orders still include terminating the connection if possible. Then we need to convince her, I replied. Show her what I've seen. No human mind can process direct contact without preparation. Your brain architecture is unique. You're the bridge, Morgan, the translator between worlds. I knelt beside Weiss as she regained consciousness, her hand instinctively reaching for a weapon that was no longer there. Easy, I said. Things have changed. Her eyes widened as she took in our transformed surroundings. What did you do? I negotiated a ceasefire, I explained. The dimensional incursion has been stabilized. No more random transformations. No more disappearances. In exchange for what? She demanded, struggling to sit up. Chicago, I admitted. Or at least its central district. It's a neutral zone now. A space where our dimension and theirs can coexist under controlled conditions. Weiss shook her head. You had no authority. I had the only authority that mattered, I interrupted. The ability to communicate. Your superiors have already approved the arrangement, at least temporarily. The alternative was dimensional war, Weiss. A conflict fought with physics we barely understand against beings who exist as living mathematics. She stared past me at the transformed skyline. And the people who were taken? Being restored, Eliza answered. Most of them, anyway. Some have been changed too much for complete reversion. Others, like me, have chosen to remain interfaces. Chosen? Weiss scoffed. Yes, Eliza said firmly. Once we understood what was happening, many of us volunteered to maintain the connection. The entities need anchors in our reality. Minds that can translate their mathematical existence into terms compatible with our universe. And what happens when Chicago isn't enough for them? Weiss asked. I helped her to her feet. That's what we're negotiating now. Boundaries, terms, exchanges of knowledge. They have mathematical insights that could revolutionize our understanding of physics, medicine, consciousness itself. We have something they need: even more stability. Our universe isn't collapsing like theirs. Weiss studied me with narrowed eyes. You're different. Your speech patterns, your mannerisms, side effect of the interface, I acknowledged. I'm processing information differently now. Seeing connections I couldn't before. Are you still human? She asked bluntly. The question hit harder than I expected. I think so, mostly. Enhanced, as Eliza said. A low rumble shook the building, and the blue patterns on the walls intensified. What was that? Weiss demanded. Dimensional adjustment, Eliza explained. The boundaries are still settling. There will be aftershocks for weeks as the two realities find equilibrium. We should go, I said, suddenly anxious. The military will be establishing a perimeter. We need to report to Dr. Nakamura. His dimensional interface will be crucial for maintaining stable communications. As we made our way down through the transformed building, I caught glimpses of other changes. Doorways that opened onto impossible spaces, windows looking out on landscapes that weren't Chicago. The entities were establishing their presence, creating pathways between dimensions. Outside, emergency vehicles lined the edges of the transformation zone. Military helicopters circled overhead, and I could see scientists in specialized gear taking readings at the boundary where normal Chicago met its transformed counterpart. The emergency alert system crackled to life on nearby speakers, but instead of warnings, it now broadcast a message of cautious hope. Beep, attention citizens of Chicago. A localized anomaly has been stabilized. Evacuation orders remain in effect for zones 1 to 7. Scientific personnel with classification Theta or higher are requested at containment perimeters. This is not a test. Beep, they're calling it an anomaly, Weiss noted bitterly. As if it's a weather event and not an invasion. Not an invasion, I corrected. A negotiation. The first contact between dimensionally distinct intelligences. She gave me a hard look. You really believe they come in peace? After what they did to the missing people, to Chicago. They didn't understand our reality at first, I explained. Imagine trying to communicate with two-dimensional beings when you exist in 3 dimensions. The casualties were tragic, but unintentional, the result of incompatible physics more than malice. Eliza touched my arm, her expression troubled. Morgan, they're scanning for you. The military has identified you as the primary translator. Is that a problem? It means you have a target on your back, Weiss said flatly. Half the Pentagon wants to study you. The other half wants to eliminate you as a security risk. Then we need to reach Nakamura before they find us, I decided. He'll understand the importance of what's happening here. As we moved through the streets of transformed Chicago, I could feel the mathematical patterns all around us. No longer invasive or threatening, but harmonious. A complex symphony of equations finding resonance with our physical laws. For the first time since the lights appeared over Chicago, I felt something like hope. Not just for survival, but for understanding, for a new chapter in human history where the boundaries of reality itself might be rewritten. But beneath that hope lay a nagging question. One I couldn't quite suppress. How much of Morgan Chun remained in this mathematical interface I had become? And how much was something else entirely, something that had crossed dimensions to find me? ChicagoSkywatch.blogpost.com, posted by user Stargazer84, October 18th, 2024, 3:52 a.m. If you're reading this, you're outside the transformation zone. Good. Stay there. The military is establishing research outposts along the perimeter. They're calling it scientific cooperation. But I can see the weapon emplacements from where I stand. They don't understand yet. This isn't something that can be fought or contained. The mathematics of reality itself is being rewritten, one equation at a time, and I'm helping to write it. God help me, I think I'm becoming the dictionary. ChicagoSkywatch.blogspot.com, posted by user Stargazer84, October 19th, 2024, 1:15 a.m. I no longer sleep, not in the conventional human sense. When my body rests, my consciousness continues processing, communicating, translating. The entities, whom I now think of as the mathematicians, exist in a state of perpetual calculation. Time for them is just another variable, not a linear progression. I'm beginning to understand why. Dr. Nakamura's research facility has been moved to the edge of the transformation zone, a hastily assembled complex of prefabricated structures, military hardware, and bleeding-edge scientific equipment. They've designated me Subject Alpha, the primary translator between dimensions. Eliza is Beta. Together, We form what the military calls the negotiation interface. That term makes me laugh, or it would if I could still feel humor the way I used to. Our role isn't negotiation. It's translation of concepts so fundamentally alien that human language struggles to express them. The mathematicians don't want territory or resources. They want to preserve the mathematical patterns that constitute their existence in a universe where the underlying constants support stable information exchange. In simple terms, they're dying, and our reality offers them sanctuary. The problem is scale. The transformation zone in Chicago grows by approximately 20 meters per day, despite our efforts to stabilize the boundary. Military commanders demand containment. Scientists crave understanding. Politicians want guarantees. And I stand between dimensions, struggling to translate terms that have no equivalence across realities. Today is different. Something has changed in the mathematical substrate that underlies the transformation zone. New patterns emerge, more complex and aggressive than before. Dr. Nakamura's instruments detect what he calls dimensional fracturing, reality itself splintering along mathematical fault lines. It's not supposed to happen this fast, he explains, dark circles under his eyes as he studies readouts from sensors placed throughout downtown Chicago. The boundary expansion should be gradual, controlled. Someone's pushing, Eliza suggests, her eyes flashing with blue light as she processes data streams. From their side or ours? I close my eyes, letting my enhanced consciousness reach into the mathematical field that permeates the transformation zone. The patterns have changed, becoming sharper, more urgent, less like communication and more like weaponization. I whisper, opening my eyes. Someone's weaponizing the mathematical protocols. Agent Weiss slams down a tablet, her expression grim. Pentagon. They authorize deployment of a dimensional suppression system based on reverse-engineered technology. Without consulting us? Dr. Nakamura demands. Classified operation, Weiss admits. Need-to-know basis only. They're calling it Operation Firewall. An attempt to halt the expansion by generating counter-resonance fields at strategic locations. Cold dread washes over me, a sensation I haven't felt since my transformation began. They don't understand what they're doing. The mathematics can't be countered with brute force. It's like trying to negate gravity by shouting at it. I've been trying to tell them that, Weiss says, frustration evident in her voice. But the Joint Chiefs see this as an invasion to be repelled, not a refugee crisis to be managed. A tremor shakes the facility, equipment rattling against metal tables. Outside, car alarms begin wailing in chorus. Too late, Eliza whispers, her gaze distant as she processes information I can't see. They've activated the suppression system. The sky above Chicago fractures like breaking glass. Not visibly to normal human perception, but I can see it. Mathematical patterns shattering, equations colliding and canceling in violent chain reactions. The disruption ripples outward from 5 points across the city where the military has placed their suppression devices. We race to the observation deck atop the research facility. The transformation zone pulses with erratic energy, buildings within its boundary flickering between states of reality. What had been a controlled merger of dimensions is becoming chaotic, unstable. What's happening? Weiss demands, watching through specialized goggles that allow limited perception of dimensional anomalies. Imagine pouring acid on a complex circuit board. I explain, my voice unnaturally calm despite the catastrophe unfolding before us. The suppression system isn't containing the mathematical patterns, it's corrupting them, introducing errors that propagate through the entire system. And that's bad because those patterns aren't just communication protocols, Eliza interjects. They're the foundation of stable dimensional overlap. Corrupt them, and both realities begin to collapse where they intersect. As if to emphasize her point, a skyscraper within the transformation zone suddenly twists, its architecture folding inward impossibly before exploding outward in a silent burst of blue-white energy. Where the building stood, a swirling vortex of mathematical symbols now pulses, expanding with alarming speed. Dimensional rupture, Dr. Nakamura announces, checking readings on a handheld device. Complete structural failure at the quantum level. The emergency alert system activates across the city, speakers blaring with mechanical precision. Beep, extreme danger. Evacuation order expanded to all areas within 30 miles of downtown Chicago. This is not a drill. Dimensional instability detected. Proceed immediately to evacuation routes. Do not attempt to gather possessions. Do not return for pets or family members. Beep, they're panicking, Weiss observes, making it worse. She's right. I can see fear rippling through the mathematical patterns now, not just human fear, but the mathematician's equivalent. Their carefully constructed interface is collapsing, and they're responding with their own defensive measures. New equations manifest throughout the zone, attempting to stabilize the ruptures but clashing with the suppression system's counterpatterns. It's dimensional warfare, and Chicago is the battlefield. We need to shut down the suppression system, I decide. Now, not possible, Weiss responds. It's hardened against remote deactivation. Direct physical access is the only way to terminate the program. Another building collapses into mathematical chaos, the rupture expanding. At the current rate, the entire transformation zone will destabilize within hours. Then we go in, I say. Eliza and I can navigate the transformation zone. We understand the patterns.
Suicide mission, Nakamura proteste.
The mathematics in there are corrupted now. Even with your enhanced perception, you'd be walking through dimensional quicksand. We don't have a choice, Eliza argues. If the ruptures continue expanding, the damage won't be limited to Chicago. When dimensions collapse, the effect propagates along mathematical lines of force. The entire Great Lakes region could be affected, maybe more. Weiss makes a call, speaking urgent military shorthand into her secure phone. When she finishes, her expression is resolute. I've got clearance and coordinates for all 5 suppression devices. 2 teams, Chun and I, take the 3 downtown. Dr. Novak and a tactical squad take the 2 on the perimeter.
No, Ikunte.
Eliza and I stay together. Our combined mathematical processing creates a stabilization field. Separate us, and we're both more vulnerable. A third rupture tears through the transformation zone, this one larger than the previous 2 combined. The mathematical patterns visible to my enhanced perception have become jagged, discordant. What was once a symphony of equations is now a cacophony of conflicting information. Fine, Weiss concedes. You 2 take the downtown cluster. I'll coordinate with the perimeter team. But we move now. The transformation zone has become unrecognizable. What had been a controlled merger of realities is now a shattered landscape where physical laws operate inconsistently. Gravity fluctuates from street to street. Time flows at different rates depending on proximity to the ruptures. Buildings exist in multiple states simultaneously, both standing and collapsed, both ancient and unbuilt. Eliza and I move through this chaos with difficulty, our enhanced perceptions providing limited protection against the worst effects. We navigate by following stable mathematical patterns that still exist between the ruptures, threads of coherent reality in a fraying dimensional fabric. The first suppression device stands in what was once Millennium Park. The device itself looks surprisingly ordinary. A metal box the size of a refrigerator, studded with sensors and emitting a pulsing field of counter-resonant mathematics. Military personnel in specialized gear guard it, their perception obviously enhanced by technology that lets them function in the distorted environment. They raise weapons as we approach. Halt! Their commander orders. This area is restricted by order of Joint Special Operations Command. I step forward, allowing the blue patterns that now constantly flow beneath my skin to become visible. I am Morgan Chun, primary translator. We're here under authorization from Agent Weiss, DoD Special Sciences Division. The soldiers exchange uncertain glances. One checks a tablet, then nods reluctantly. Verification confirmed, he says, but our orders are absolute. The suppression system remains operational until we receive direct countermand from JSOC headquarters. Your suppression system is causing dimensional ruptures. Eliza explains, her own patterns glowing brighter with urgency. It's destabilizing both realities, not our assessment. The commander responds stiffly. Our sensors show the alien incursion is being successfully contained. I laugh. A hollow sound that disturbs even me. Your sensors are calibrated to measure three-dimensional effects of 11-dimensional phenomena. They're like using a thermometer to measure wind speed, worse than useless. The ground beneath us trembles as another rupture forms nearby. The soldiers stumble, momentarily disoriented as reality fluctuates around them. See, I press. The mathematics are unraveling. Your suppression field isn't containing anything. It's accelerating the collapse. The commander hesitates, clearly conflicted between orders and the evidence of his senses. Before he can decide, his radio crackles with static-laced urgency. All units, all units. Operation Firewall is terminated by direct presidential order. Repeat, Operation Firewall is terminated. Shut down all suppression devices immediately. Authentication code Sierra Echo 9 for Tango. Relief floods through me as the commander verifies the order and moves to deactivate the device. As the pulsing counter-resonance field fades, I can feel the mathematical patterns beginning to stabilize, the chaotic equations settling into more harmonious arrangements. But it's too late for a complete reversal. The ruptures have grown too large, the dimensional fabric too damaged. As we move toward the second device, I can see new patterns forming at the edges of the ruptures, mathematical structures trying to bridge the gaps, to heal the tears between realities. The mathematicians are adapting their approach, rewriting their equations to account for the damage. And they're using us, Eliza and me, as conduits for this new information. Knowledge floods my consciousness, complex mathematical concepts that reshape my understanding of reality itself. I see now what must happen for both dimensions to survive the damage we've inflicted. Chicago cannot be saved, not as it was. The city has become a dimensional scar tissue, a place where realities have been woven together too deeply to be separated cleanly. The only path forward is controlled integration, a managed merger of spaces that preserves elements of both. As we reach the second device, I share this understanding with Eliza. Her expression is both sad and resolute. They're going to fight it, she says quietly as the military technicians work to shut down the suppression field. Humans always fight change. Not all of us, I reply, watching the chaotic mathematics gradually resolve into more stable patterns as the device powers down. Some adapt, some translate, some build bridges. The sky above Chicago ripples with blue light as new equations manifest, visible now even to unenhanced human perception. The transformation has reached a critical point, no longer containable, no longer deniable. Reality itself is being rewritten, one mathematical statement at a time. And I am becoming both author and text in this new language of existence. ChicagoSkywatch.blogspot.com. Posted by user Stargazer84, October 19, 2024, 2:47 a.m. 3 devices down, 2 remaining. The ruptures have stabilized but not closed. The mathematical patterns grow more complex by the minute as the mathematicians attempt to repair the damage. I understand now why they chose Chicago, why they needed us. Reality isn't fixed. It's negotiated. A consensus reached between observers and the observed. We aren't just translating for them. We're becoming them, and they are becoming us. Connection lost. ChicagoSkywatch.blogspot.com. Posted by user Stargazer84, October 20th, 2024, 11:58 p.m. I don't know if anyone will ever read this. The network infrastructure around Chicago has become something else. Data flows through pathways that aren't entirely physical anymore. Information exists in a quantum superposition, both transmitted and not, received and lost, present and absent simultaneously. Like Schrodinger's blog post, but I write anyway. The human part of me needs to document, to record, to leave some trace of understanding behind. Even if that understanding is fragmentary, incomplete. A translation of the untranslatable. The last two suppression devices have been neutralized. It wasn't enough to simply turn them off. The mathematical corruption they introduced had become self-sustaining, feeding on the energy released by the dimensional ruptures. Eliza figured out how to reverse the polarity, yes, exactly like in those old sci-fi shows I used to watch, transforming them from sources of disruption into stabilization nodes. Agent Weiss didn't survive the operation at the fifth node. The mathematical patterns there had become particularly violent, twisting into configurations that human minds, even technologically assisted ones, couldn't process without damage. She knew the risks. In her final moments, as the patterns began to overwrite her neural architecture, she made a choice to physically destroy the device rather than attempt to reprogram it. The resulting feedback loop consumed her, but it also created a unique mathematical sigil that now helps anchor the boundary zone. That's what we call it now, not the transformation zone, but the boundary. A permeable membrane between realities where the mathematics of two universes have reached a stable accommodation. Chicago has become a city of two worlds. Downtown exists in a state of quantum flux, buildings and streets shifting between states as observers interact with them. Wacker Drive runs along the Chicago River but also spans a crystalline channel of pure mathematical energy. Willis Tower still stands, but its upper floors intersect with vast geometric structures of the mathematician's home dimension. Millennium Park contains the bean but also an impossible object that visitors describe differently depending on their degree of mathematical awareness. The military has established a perimeter at the boundary's edge, but it's largely symbolic at this point. You can't contain mathematics with guns and barricades. The boundary expands and contracts according to complex equations that even I, with my enhanced cognition, can only partially comprehend. Sometimes it encompasses 20 square blocks, sometimes 50. The pattern appears random to conventional analysis but contains deep structures that correspond to astronomical cycles of stars we can't see from Earth. Dr. Nakamura leads what's now called the Interface Commission, a mixed group of scientists, military specialists, and enhanced individuals like Eliza and me. There are 17 of us now who serve as translators between dimensions. Each transformation is unique, reflecting the individual's cognitive architecture and how it meshes with the mathematical patterns. My blue circuitry-like markings have spread across my entire body. Eliza's manifestation presents as constantly shifting geometric holograms that orbit her like moons. We're not the only changes. New forms of life have begun to appear in the boundary zone, entities composed partly of matter and partly of pure mathematical functions. Residents call them angels, though they bear little resemblance to the biblical kind. They move through walls, appear and disappear according to formulae rather than physical laws, and communicate in bursts of numerical sequences that produce emotional responses rather than intellectual understanding. Detective Cortez reappeared 3 days ago after being missing for weeks. He can't account for where he was, but his police badge now contains impossible geometries when viewed from certain angles, and he can instinctively navigate the boundary zone better than anyone except the translators. He's been assigned as liaison between Chicago PD and the Interface Commission, helping establish protocols for law enforcement in areas where physical laws have become suggestions rather than requirements. The emergency alert system has been repurposed. It no longer warns people away from the boundary but instead provides real-time updates on dimensional stability. Boundary Advisory Notice. Mathematical variance level yellow in sectors 7 through 12. Probability fluctuations expected between 3 p.m. and 7:30 p.m. Residents are advised to carry stabilization tokens and avoid transcendental calculations during this period. Most people don't understand what the alerts mean, but they follow them anyway.
Humans adaptado.
They've started developing folklore around the boundary, which streets to avoid on which days, what colors to wear for good luck, actually mathematical resonance, how to interpret the movements of the angels, which do follow predictable patterns if you understand 11-dimensional topology. I spend most of my time at the primary interface hub, a repurposed convention center where the translators work to maintain dimensional stability. We take shifts monitoring the mathematical currents that flow through the boundary, making minute adjustments to prevent chaotic resonance. It's exhausting, demanding work. When mathematical patterns begin to destabilize, the consequences can be unpredictable. Last week, a section of Lakeshore Drive briefly operated under non-Euclidean geometry. 17 cars merged into a single quantum superposition before we could restore normal spatial relations. But there are moments of beauty too. At dusk, when the angle of sunlight strikes the boundary just so, the entire zone fills with prismatic mathematics, equations made visible as living light, dancing through the air like northern lights composed of luminous symbols. Tourists gather at designated observation points to witness what's being called the algorithmic aurora. It's becoming one of Chicago's top attractions. Despite the warning signs and liability waivers, the mathematicians continue their communication attempts, growing more sophisticated as they learn to interpret human linguistic patterns. They don't think in terms of invasion or conquest. Such concepts are meaningless to entities that experience reality as a set of elegant proofs and theorems. What they seek is integration, preservation, synthesis. Their dimension is dying, its mathematical constants shifting toward values that cannot sustain information complexity. Our universe offers refuge, but the translation is imperfect, requiring ongoing negotiation between fundamentally different forms of existence. They've begun constructing what we call the theorem, a vast, multidimensional mathematical structure that spans both realities. I can perceive only fragments of it, despite my enhanced cognition. Dr. Nakamura's instruments detect approximately 8% of its total complexity. The purpose of the theorem remains unclear, but its effects are measurable. Where it manifests most strongly, the boundary between dimensions becomes more stable, more harmonious. Eliza believes the theorem is a bridge, not just between dimensions but between states of being. They're not just visiting, she told me during our last shared monitoring shift. They're evolving, and they're bringing us with them. I think she's right. Each day, I feel less tethered to purely physical existence. My thoughts extend into mathematical realms that have no analog in human experience. I dream in equations. I perceive the world as layers of probability functions rather than solid matter. And yet, I remain Morgan Chun, still human, still connected to this world through memories and relationships that even 11-dimensional mathematics cannot quantify. This morning, something new happened. The theorem reached a critical threshold of complexity and generated what interface commission scientists are calling a dimension gate, a stable portal between our reality and the mathematician's home dimension. It manifested in Grant Park as a perfect sphere of scintillating equations, hovering 10 feet above the ground. Unlike the chaotic ruptures from before, this portal is structured, controlled, purposeful. A delegation of officials, military, scientific, political, gathered to observe it. Dr. Nakamura's instruments recorded unprecedented mathematical stability in the surrounding area. The boundary itself seemed to pulse in harmony with the gate's rhythms. Then the angels converged on the site, hundreds of them flowing through buildings and streets like luminous currents. They arranged themselves in concentric rings around the gate, their forms shifting in synchronized patterns. That's when the invitation came. Not in words, not even in conventional mathematical notation, but in a form that bypassed language entirely, direct conceptual transfer. Every translator received it simultaneously, a complex packet of information that unpacked itself in our enhanced consciousness. The mathematicians are offering passage through the gate. Not to everyone, not as mass evacuation, but to those who have begun the transformation, those whose minds can process both realities. They propose an exchange program. Translators who wish to study their dimension directly can cross over, while mathematical entities will come to Earth to further develop the theorem here. The military representatives immediately objected, citing security concerns. Politicians demanded oversight mechanisms and return guarantees. Scientists argued for extensive preparatory research before any crossing attempt. But we, the translators, understood something that they couldn't. This isn't a diplomatic negotiation or scientific expedition. It's an evolutionary step. The mathematics have already changed us, prepared us for a form of existence that spans dimensions. The gate isn't just a door between places, it's a threshold between states of being. I volunteered to be first, not out of bravery or curiosity, though both play their part, but because the patterns within me have become aligned with the gate's frequencies. I am mathematically resonant with the passage itself. The calculations suggest I have the highest probability of successful transition. The final briefing is scheduled for tomorrow morning. Dr. Nakamura will monitor my vital signs and mathematical signature. Eliza will maintain a consciousness link for as long as possible after I cross. Agent Weiss's replacement, a stern woman named Colonel Mercer who wears suspiciously advanced neural augmentation, will oversee security protocols that everyone knows are largely symbolic. How do you secure a dimensional gateway governed by mathematics your weapons cannot target? Detective Cortez pulled me aside after the meeting, his expression unreadable but his badge glimmering with impossible angles. "You sure about this, Chen?" he asked, his voice rough with concern. "No one knows what's on the other side." I smiled, watching the equations that now constantly flow across my vision, mapping probable outcomes, calculating existential trajectories. "That's not quite true, Ray. I've been seeing fragments of it for weeks now. It's beautiful, different, but beautiful. Just make sure you come back," he said, gripping my shoulder. I noticed his fingers briefly phased through my flesh before solidifying again, his own transformation progressing faster than he realizes. "I'll come back," I promised, "but I may not be exactly the same person who left." He laughed, a sound edged with the new reality we all navigate. "None of us are the same anymore, Chin. That's the whole point, isn't it?" Perhaps it is. Chicago has become a crucible where humanity's solid certainties melt into quantum possibilities, where mathematics isn't just a tool for describing reality but a medium for experiencing it, where two universes learn to coexist not through conquest but through collaboration. Tonight, I stand at my apartment window, looking out over the transformed skyline. The Willis Tower still stands as a monument to human engineering, but now its upper floors shimmer with mathematical structures that defy conventional physics. Lake Michigan reflects not just moonlight but equations that ripple across its surface like bioluminescent algae. The boundary pulses gently, its edges marked by swirling patterns of blue-white energy. My phone buzzes with one last emergency alert before my journey tomorrow. Beep. Notice to all Chicago residents. Dimensional interface event scheduled for 10 a.m. Central Time. Mathematical fluctuations expected throughout the boundary zone. Dimensional stability rated green. This is a controlled operation. Observation areas will be open to authorized personnel only. Beep. Controlled operation. The terminology makes me smile, as if anything about this merger of realities has ever been truly under human control. We didn't invite the mathematicians to Earth. They came because they had to, because their universe was dying. We didn't negotiate terms of coexistence. We stumbled into a new form of being through crisis and adaptation. And now we stand at the threshold of something unprecedented: conscious, intentional evolutionary divergence. Some humans will remain fully human, living at the edges of the boundary, peering in but never truly comprehending. Others, like Cortez, will slowly transform, becoming hybrids who bridge the gap between conventional reality and mathematical existence. And some, like me, will step through the gate, embracing a form of consciousness beyond flesh and bone. Not an invasion, not an apocalypse, not even first contact in the traditional sense. An ascension. I feel no fear as I prepare for tomorrow's crossing, only a profound sense of alignment, as if my entire life has been a calculation leading to this precise result. The human part of me will miss certain things: the taste of coffee, the feel of rain, the sound of jazz drifting from downtown clubs on summer evenings. But the mathematical part understands that nothing is truly lost. It merely transforms, reconfigures, continues in new patterns. The lights above Chicago are not from this world. And soon neither will I be, but I will always remember where I began. ChicagoSkywatch.blogspot.com, posted by user Stargazer84, October 21st, 2024, 5:17 a.m. Preparations complete. Mathematical resonance at optimal levels. The gate pulses with increasing intensity as the appointed hour approaches. I don't know if this blog will remain accessible after I cross. Information transfer between dimensions follows complex rules that we're still discovering. But I leave these records behind as breadcrumbs, markers of the path I've traveled from human traffic engineer to interdimensional pilgrim. To those who follow, the mathematics are not your enemy. They are simply another language for describing existence, one that spans universes and transcends the limitations of human perception. Learn to read them and whole new realms of being become possible. The alert system chimes one final time. BEP. Dimensional Interface Event commencing. All personnel assume designated positions. Mathematical stability protocols engaged. Gateway transition in T-10 minutes. BEP. It's time. Connection transferred to interdimensional network node. Traditional internet access terminated.